High school prodigies have it easy in another world. Follows the story of 7 high school prodigies who find themselves in another world after surviving a plane crash. In this new world, they use their exceptional skills to not only survive, but also to improve the lives of the people they encounter. As they navigate through this world, they encounter allies and enemies, and get embroiled in the local politics and conflicts. 2 local girls witness a massive plane crash that takes place in the world of Frejigard. Meanwhile, in modern Japan, 7 high school-age students, also known as the high school prodigies, have each excelled in their own fields to such a degree that each one is the world's best at his or her own craft. As a young woman who possessed intelligence that was centuries ahead of her time, Ringo was hailed as the greatest inventor in the history of the world. As a samurai who lived in the midst of war zones, Aoi Ichigo was revered as the best swordsman, despite the fact that she was still in high school. Because of his pioneering medical abilities, Kane Kanzaki was able to increase the average lifespan of humans and established himself as the best physician in the world. Despite the fact that he was still in high school, Masato Sanada, a demon in the world of finance, went on to become the most successful entrepreneur in the world and dominate global transactions. In his capacity as the most acclaimed magician, Prince Akatsuki, an illusionist who was skilled in a variety of arts, captivated audiences all over the world. In addition to being a descendant of ninjas, Shinobu possessed instincts that were unmatched by anyone else and became the most prominent journalist in the world. In conclusion, Tsukasa Mikagami, a political prodigy, was elected as the Prime Minister of Japan despite the fact that he was still rather young. When these 7 prodigies, each of whom was exceptional in their own right, were on the same plane, their lives became intertwined. Unfortunately, the plane crashed, and therefore their lives were cut short. 4 days later, Tsukasa Mikagami, the leader of the prodigy, wakes up in a critical condition. With a sense of relief, a young lady with elf ears greeted him. In a state of panic, Tsukasa inquires about his other fellow prodigies. A reassurance was given to him by the elf girl that everyone was getting better. The girl introduces herself as Lyrule, and presents Tsukasa a stew that was prepared using goat's milk. He was encouraged by Lyrule, who asserted that eating would assist him in feeling better. Despite his initial reluctance, he eventually agreed to consume food as a result of Lyrule's unconventional method of feeding. They were interrupted when another girl entered the room. She has ears that resemble wolves and a tail. Tsukasa was perplexed and pondered if these were the traditional garb of the area or if they were used for some kind of medical treatment. As the young lady introduced herself as Winona, he remained silent because he was preoccupied with his own thoughts. The realization that the tale was, in fact, real came to Tsukasa not long after, much to his astonishment. He was reassured by Winona that qualities of this nature were typical in Frejigard. Suddenly, Tsukasa started to question if he had actually arrived in a different nation. In an effort to garner recognition, he disclosed to the girls that he was originally from Japan. On the other hand, they claim that they have never in their lives encountered it before, and Tsukasa's confusion only grew worse. That they were speaking Japanese was something that he exclaimed with astonishment. Despite this, the girls insisted that they had been utilizing the Altan language throughout the entire conversation. As Tsukasa came to terms with the fact that he was no longer in Japan or in his own world, he had a moment of realization. He demanded that he be taken to the location where the plane had crashed. Lyrule related that they had seen a large object flying low across the sky 4 days ago, and that it was followed by a loud sound. In a hurry, everyone in the village went to investigate what it was. When they discovered what appeared to be the skeleton of a massive bird, they discovered the 7 of them lying nearby. Tsukasa was taken aback when she saw the shattered pieces of the plane, and she pondered the question of how it was even possible for them to have survived such a catastrophic plane crash. All of a sudden, a massive dragon flew directly above their heads. Despite his surprise, Tsukasa came to the conclusion that there was no other possible explanation. The fact that they had arrived in a different world was something that they had to deal with. In order to commemorate the prodigy's successful recovery, a feast is held 1 month later. According to the mayor of the village, he is still unable to accept the fact that they are real people from another world. Lyrule inquired of the prodigies if they arrived from a world that did not possess Bayuma. She made it clear that the term Bayuma referred to individuals who possessed animal-like characteristics and of great strength. She went on to explain that aside from the 7 of them, there were also individuals who were referred to as Huma. A power known as magic was typically possessed by these individuals, and they were able to use it. Tsukasa proposed that they should carry out some investigation into the magic that exists in this world. Despite the fact that there is a general sense of merriment surrounding the event, Winona's son Elch becomes enraged when she tells a story about 7 travelers from another world. Elch was already dissatisfied with the extravagant expenditures that the village had made on this occasion, and he storms out of the banquet hall in a fit of rage after he has explained the reasons for his displeasure. Tsukasa, who is experiencing feelings of guilt for imposing on the villagers, puts together a group of other prodigies in order to find ways to assist the villagers while simultaneously gaining knowledge about the world and attempting to find ways to return home. When Tsukasa is leaving the village the following day, Prodigy Ringo Ohoshi is having a conversation with her about how Ringo intends to refine nearby bauxite into aluminum. At the same time, she is planning to leave. A local patrol of soldiers arrives at the village. As a result of Winona's refusal to present them with any tribute, the leader of the group made an attempt to sexually harass her. However, Tsukasa intervened to protect her from the perverts. In order to engage in combat with the prodigies, the soldiers drew their swords. However, they were quickly defeated in a matter of minutes in a very short amount of time. As they fled with their tails between their legs, the soldiers also made a promise to the king that they would report back to him on their way back. On the other hand, Akatsuki prevented them from proceeding and made certain that they did not disclose any of the happenings that took place in the village to the king. Tsukasa said, "If we were to give it our all, we could end up ruining this world." Later on, he reiterates that each prodigy should find a way to help that is in tune with his or her own talent, which he believes should be easy for them to do. However, he also tells them to hold back because, as Tsukasa said, if we were to give it our all, we could end up ruining this world. After a few days had passed, Masato and Elch went to the Nuchilan Trading Company in order to acquire some supplies for the village so that it could endure the winter. The merchant, Jokoi, who headed the Nuchilan Trading Company, valued the goods at extravagant prices and forced Elch and Masato to leave the shop. The exorbitant prices that Nuchilan Trading Company charges have caused Masato to become so enraged that he has decided not to do business with them. Elch finds this shocking as Nuchilan is the only trading company in the area, to which Masato responds that they can make money anyway without living in anyone else's shadow. He is determined to start his own new merchant company. He made a promise to Elch that he'd bring down Jokoi's merchant company in just 1 week and teach him how to make money. Masato advised him to keep an eye on things, despite Elch's assertion that it is physically impossible to do so. This catches the attention of a Bayuma girl who is located nearby. The conversation is being overheard by a young girl named Ru who is homeless and is located a few meters away from them. The children are blown away by Akatsuki's magic tricks, which he performs in front of them. There is a woman in the village who expresses her gratitude to Tsukasa for their assistance throughout the entire village. Tsukasa explains to her that they are merely attempting to get back at them for the kindness they have shown them. Not only does she inform them that their supplies are running low, but she also inquires about the most effective way to proceed. Masato will find a solution to the problem, Tsukasa assures her, so she should not be concerned about it. The conversation is cut off by Winona, who then proceeds to inform them about the dreadful merchant Jokoi, who consistently raises the prices of goods throughout the entire year. They are instructed by Tsukasa to leave the situation in the hands of the businessman Masato. That evening, Masato worked with the mayor of the town to obtain a permit that would allow him to open his trading company. Elch was taken aback by the fact that he was able to pull off such a stunt in just 1 day. Shinobu arrives and informs Elch that she was also involved in the assistance that was provided. She departs from him in a short time and goes her separate way. During the time that they are getting ready to leave, The homeless child that Masato had been following earlier reveals herself to be Ru and begs him to take her under his control. As a result, she has a strong desire to acquire knowledge about business and marketing from the individual himself. The greed that can be seen in her eyes prompts Masato to offer to instruct her in the ways of doing business. As soon as he finishes getting her better clothes, he heads out to his next appointment with some of the smaller merchants in the area. At that location, he suggests that they come sell their wares in their shopping plaza and pay them a small percentage of their sales as rent. Additionally, he provides the merchants with additional terms that are favorable to them, and they agree to the deal. After the merchants have left, Elch approaches Masato and inquires about his level of comfort with earning money without exerting any effort. The advice that Masato gives him is to hold off and watch the major events unfold. Masato locates a location for their shopping mall the following day and constructs a makeshift shopping mall that is located closer to residential access in order to facilitate easier access for the people. It doesn't take long before the shopping center starts to become crowded with merchants. When it comes to the difficult part, Masato tells his apprentices that it is now time. In order for them to be able to pay the merchants, it is necessary for them to ensure that the merchants make sales. They wait for customers to come in while they remain in the stalls at all times. A few hours later, people start to take notice of the shopping center. After noticing how low the prices are, they make the decision to give the purchase a shot. Soon, the entire shopping center will be crowded with people purchasing a variety of items. In order to provide Masato with an update regarding Jacoi's shady dealings, Shinobu calls him. He instructs her to make it possible for them to transport supplies to the village by arranging for some carts. On that same evening, the village starts to fill up with supplies, and everyone is once again happy. Jacoi is aware of the new shopping center that has opened up in the vicinity of the town, but he does not feel threatened or anxious about the prospect of surpassing him. The very next day, Masato makes some mayonnaise available for purchase on the market. People in the town are enthusiastic about the new items, and they make sure to purchase all of them before the day is over. After some time has passed, the captain of the Commerce Fleet Sea Serpent makes a trip to the shopping mall in order to sample their mayonnaise. Regrettably, there are none available for purchase. Masato makes arrangements for a meeting with the captain to discuss business, and the meeting finishes on a positive note. By the following day, the captain has reached an agreement with Masato. As Elch and Ru sit on a cart full of gold coins on the evening of the second day, they are celebrating the fact that they have just made a fortune in just a few days. During his visit, Shinobu informs Masato that Jacoi intends to construct a new market in the central plaza in order to regain the patronage of his previous customers. Ringo shares her latest creation, aluminum shovels, with Tsukasa Mikagami. Due to the fact that he has observed that she is overworked, he advises her to get some rest while he is thinking about how all of the prodigies have also been overworked recently. While this is going on, Jacoi is in Dormont finding out that Masato Sanada's Elm Trading Company has purchased all of his goods and workers. This causes him to feel a great deal of concern. It is revealed by Masato that Jacoi's employees left because he terminated their employment for the purpose of patrolling land routes. This was done because the harbor was Jacoi's primary source of income, which enabled Masato to take advantage of the situation for his own benefit. Jacoi receives additional instruction from Masato regarding trust, during which he asserts that the trust of one's employees is more important than cash. When Jacoi, upon realizing that his company is about to be destroyed, begs for mercy, Masato not only grants his request, but also promises to work out the particulars with him in order to prevent Elm from gaining a monopoly on the market. After some time has passed, Masato reveals to Elch, who is perplexed, and to Ru, who is attentive, that this had been his plan all along, to burden Jacoi's Nuchilan Trading Company with an inventory that Elm was unable to utilize. The company of guards arrives to take away Ru, as she was formerly a slave and her owners want her back. In response, Masato once again demonstrates his more compassionate side by purchasing Ru from the slavers so that she can be free as she was before, which makes everyone involved very happy. This occurs while Masato is gloating about being called the Demon Lord back in his world because of these kinds of tactics. When Tsukasa returns to Elm Village, Shinobu Sarutobi tells her that she has gained a great deal of knowledge regarding the magic system of the world. According to Shinobu Sarutobi, there are 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. People gain power by communing with the spirits of these elements, although it is extremely uncommon for anyone to be able to do so. She also revealed that she has learned that the legend of the 7 heroes that Winona told them about was once believed by a religion known as the Seven Light Faith, but that this religion, along with all other religions, was destroyed when the empire that is currently dominating the world took control of the world. Shinobu is concerned that they will be unable to leave without a travel permit from Marquis Findolf, who is known to be a despicable man. Tsukasa is of the opinion that the faith is their only chance of escaping the world. Nevertheless, the revelation of a public steam bath that Aoi Akijo and Kumasa have constructed serves to interrupt this discussion. The arrival of Prince Akatsuki, who reveals that many of the villagers, while hunting, came across a monster known as the Chief of the Forest, interrupts the villagers as they are enjoying the bath. Prince Akatsuki reveals that the Chief of the Forest was a monster. During their pursuit of the monster, Tsukasa, Winona, Aoi, and Kane Kanzaki are informed that Mayor Olga of Elm Village has been fatally injured by the monster. This information prompts them to rush off to stop the monster. Kane examines him and finds out that she is able to save him by utilizing her medical skills. She then proceeds to do so while Aoi, utilizing her swordsmanship skills, defeats the monster. The 4 individuals make their triumphant return to Elm Village after Kane has successfully treated Olga's wounds and Aoi has successfully eliminated the monster. On the other hand, the village is in a state of low spirits. Although Masato, Elch, and Rue have returned to town, their arrival could not have come at a more inconvenient time possible. For the purpose of detaining the villagers, a large number of Findorf's guardian knights, led by the Silver Knight, Inzaghai, have arrived. Inzaghai informs the villagers that they are going to be punished for laying their hands on coins, which is a treasonous offense for peasants to do. The villagers are trapped inside a building, and they are informed by Inzaghai that they are going to be punished for their actions at that time. In response to Masato's protests that this is not a valid excuse, Inzaghai argues that he does not require an explanation either. Upon the return of Tsukasa's group, the building that housed the other individuals is ablaze, and Inzaghai and his knights are nowhere to be found. Despite the fact that many people are hopeless, Tsukasa reveals that Akatsuki is able to save the others by using the knowledge he has gained from his magic shows to figure out how to escape locked coffins. It is true that Akatsuki is responsible for the rescue of everyone who is currently inside the building. However, Akatsuki reveals that Marquis Findolf was the one who ordered all of this to take place. On top of that, Tsukasa comes to the realization that Lyrule is nowhere to be found. When Lyrule wakes up, she discovers that she is imprisoned in the castle of the Marquis Findolf, which is a development that causes her concern. While Tsukasa Mikagami is in the midst of the burning Elm Village, he is making preparations to negotiate with the Marquis for the survival of Elm's citizens, even though it may mean losing Lyrule. However, Winona convinces him otherwise, stating that the villagers will lose their humanity if they sacrifice Lyrule rather than rescuing her. Tsukasa reluctantly agrees to fight once he realizes that the villagers are willing to die in order to save Lyrule if it is necessary. However, in response to Masato Sanada's prodding, he explains that he must revert to his earlier vision of not interfering with their world in order to accommodate the assault. Instead, in order to win the assault, the villagers' civilization must advance by 500 years, destroying the world as they know it. Lyrule, who has been brought to the Marquis by Inzaghai, is enjoying herself in the Marquis's castle after being brought there by Inzaghai. Lyrule is groped by the Marquis, and she stands there, thinking that if she allows him to do this, she will be able to save the villagers. However, when he tries to kiss her, he and Lyrule are blasted away from each other by magic. The injured Marquis gives Inzaghai the order to take Lyrule into custody. Every single one of the villagers has gathered outside the castle in preparation for an all-out assault. Ringo Ohoshi unleashes a cannon into the wall of the castle, thereby enabling the villagers to approach and enter. Even though they are outnumbered, they are able to survive thanks to the duralumin shields that Ringo crafted, Elch's iron arrow firing bow that is equipped with a sight, and the timely intervention of Aoi Ikijo, Winona, and finally Prince Akatsuki's innate combat skills. While this is going on, Shinobu Sarutobi leads Tsukasa through the corridors of the castle in order to locate Lyrule. Shinobu is able to anticipate and dodge all of Gale Stafford's blows before electrocuting him. Gale Stafford is the only mage in the Marquisate, and he is the Imperial Mage officer who is attempting to stop the two. Shinobu is left to fight in Zaghai and his soldiers, while Tsukasa continues to save Lyrule on his own. Lyrule is discovered by Tsukasa bound to a window in a bedroom that is private. While Tsukasa is taking stock of the situation, he is shot through the chest by a Marquis Findolf who is concealed from view. This causes Tsukasa to fall to his knees. Findolf begins to rip Lyrule's clothing off as a form of retribution for the attack after he has gloated about having shot Tsukasa and most likely butchered Elm's villagers. After that, an enraged Tsukasa stands back up and reveals that his suit is made of aramid fibers, which makes it immune to normal guns. He then pulls out a modern handgun and shoots Findolf's dagger out of his hand. Findolf, who is terrified for his life, makes an attempt to bribe Tsukasa and then makes an attempt to threaten him. However, Tsukasa is unmoved and maintains his position by stating that he fights for democracy, which Findolf and the Emperor will never give him. During the time that Findolf is laughing at the absurdity of the concept of democracy, Tsukasa shoots Findolf in the head with a rubber bullet from his gun, causing him to become unconscious shortly after. Lyrule is set free by Tsukasa, but when she comes back to consciousness, a voice that does not belong to her gives him a dire warning about the apocalyptic fate that awaits the world. After that, she returns to her normal version of herself. While the others look on with joy, Tsukasa is aware that their journey is just getting started. Lyrule, who is overcome with emotion, expresses her gratitude to Tsukasa for the efforts that he and the others have put forth. In Dormont, a convertible truck pulls up in front of a large crowd of people. With the assistance of his rabbit-costumed assistants, Ikijo, Kane, and Ringo, Akatsuki makes his appearance and performs a series of magic tricks for the crowd. The culmination of his performance is the creation of a large display of mayonnaise jars, which he and the other individuals offer to the crowd in exchange for their commitment to recognizing Akatsuki as their new god. This offer is enthusiastically accepted by the crowd. While this is going on, Lyrule is expressing her dissatisfaction to Winona regarding the fact that she has not yet been able to express her gratitude to Tsukasa Mikagami for saving her. While Akatsuki continues his tricks, Tsukasa and Masato Sanada have a conversation about how the power of religion should be used to bring the people of Dormont together, how the 7 prodigies should be able to easily pass power to the people in the event that they will be able to find a way to return home, and how they should be able to get in touch with any followers of the old religion that was known as the Seven Light Faith. Within the confines of a snowy field, Shinobu Sarutobi exerts strong pressure on Elch to continue their journey to Buchwald in order to acquire additional information. When Mayor Walter von Hazerad returns to Dormont, he notices that the people who are behind the Seven Light Faith and Akatsuki, who continues to give people ever-increasing quantities of mayonnaise, are loyal to him. As a result, he concludes that Dormont is finished and makes preparations to leave. However, he is stopped by Tsukasa, who is dressed as a maid and presents himself as one of the angels of the Seven Light Faith. Tsukasa explains to Walter that the Faith would like to work with him and will provide him with a much better deal than he would receive if he were to flee to another location, where he would be persecuted by both the Faith and the Frejigard Empire. The following day, Walter shows up in the convertible truck and makes the announcement that Dormont will now be governed by the Seven Light Faith. The response to this is generally quite positive. However, there is one individual, Zest du Bernard, who appears to be concerned about this news. That night, while looking at a picture of Tsukasa working as a maid, something that causes Ringo to become quite excited, the prodigies discuss their plans for the future. These plans include Kane constructing a factory for more medicine, Aoi protecting Akatsuki due to his god status, Ringo producing more electricity while Masato gets her parts, and Tsukasa going to elect a leader of his new order of guards that have been repurposed into Knights of the Seven Light Faith. Bernard, who is the captain of the guard, gathers his belongings and leaves for a bar in the neighborhood barracks. It is there that he is confronted by Tsukasa with his situation. Zest du Bernard is praised by Tsukasa for his abilities and the trust that others have in him. Tsukasa ultimately makes an attempt to recruit Zest du Bernard into the knightly order. However, Bernard simply offers an explanation that he is no longer a member of the guard due to personal reasons and then exits the room. Upon Tsukasa's return to his residence, Masato is taken aback by the fact that Tsukasa's plan did not succeed. However, Tsukasa simply decides to have a conversation with Bernard the following day. Tsukasa makes an effort to persuade Bernard to become a member of the new knightly order, but Eri, Bernard's young daughter, interrupts him. Bernard explains that Eri is the most important thing to him since the death of his wife. Tsukasa's efforts are unsuccessful. While Eri is playing nearby, Bernard explains that he does not want to be forced to be a knight loyal to the faith above all else if it means being sent away from Eri. Tsukasa, on the other hand, explains that all he wants to do is bring about a future in which everyone is able to do what they see fit and protect those who are closest to them. Bernard makes a commitment to Tsukasa's knightly order because he is captivated by the prospect of a future that is truly free and the opportunity to provide Eri with a more personal level of protection. After some time has passed, Tsukasa becomes aware of a few nobles expressing their anger toward him. He makes a mental note to monitor their behavior in the future. Shinobu, who is disguised, is able to obtain information about Oslo El Gustave, the local mage officer, from a guard who is intoxicated. El Gustave is one of the most powerful men in the kingdom as a result of his great actions during the war. Shinobu obtains this information from the guard in Buchwald. In order to determine the extent of Oslo El Gustave's power, Shinobu convinces Elch to accompany her on her mission. After a few moments have passed, this metric is evaluated when Inzaghai confronts Oslo El Gustave. After berating Inzaghai for his inability to prevent the Prodigies and their armies from taking control of Dormont, Gustav beheads Inzaghai with a single blow and then decides to crush Dormont himself. A few days after Tsukasa has formed alliances with major leaders of the kingdom, he begins the process of implementing reforms and rules to accommodate the new leadership formation. After work one evening, his subordinate inquires of Ru the reason why he is always busy and never seems to get any sleep. Tsukasa chuckles and reassures his client that he is able to sleep without any problems. Olga manages to make a full recovery and get back on his feet the following morning in the village where he was staying. While he is laughing with his daughter, Winterman, he expresses his gratitude to Dr. Kane for her assistance in reviving him. Just at that moment, Ru shows up, completely exhausted and dehydrated. After providing her with some water to drink, Winterman inquires as to the reason behind her decision to go on a hunger strike. She explains to them that she is currently making her way through the multiplication tables that her boss has requested that she learn. For a brief period of time, the adults engage in playful interactions with her and make her laugh. At another location, Tsukasa and Masato are in charge of overseeing the production of machine tools and artillery for their new alliance, which is being led by Ringo. Ringo is informed by Tsukasa that he intends to construct an aerial defense system in order to engage the fighters coming from the Empire in some form of aerial defense. During this conversation, Masato brings to his attention the infamous magic spell known as the Heaven's Flames, which the Emperor had previously employed to eliminate nations and masons. Tsukasa finds himself lost in his own thoughts and ponders the various ways in which they could respond to that. Just at that moment, Lyrol shows up to thank the boys for their hard work by delivering some food to them. Tsukasa is invited out for lunch after she has finished delivering the food to them. Tsukasa, on the other hand, does not agree to go out with her and heads off to his meeting instead. As a result of the widespread belief that Tsukasa does not like her, everyone started crying. Immediately after he has left, Masato reveals to her that Tsukasa has been avoiding her because he is experiencing feelings of guilt for his initial desire to abandon her. That evening, Tsukasa puts an end to the workday and gives his subordinates permission to leave so that they can get some rest, as he becomes increasingly exhausted. His vision becomes hazy now that he is the only person in the room. Lyrule arrives and knocks on his door upon his arrival. Tsukasa makes an effort to push her away, but Lyrule is adamant about entering the building. Once they are inside, Lyrule confronts him and inquires as to the reason why he has such a strong aversion to her. She is informed by Tsukasa that he does not despise anyone, not even with himself. Lyrule assures him that she does not harbor any animosity toward him. Tsukasa then makes the decision to share with her the narrative of his life. When he was a child, he discovered that his father was a very corrupt individual, and he later revealed to her that he had worked with the individuals who were responsible for his deaths. His mother has a deep-seated hatred for him to this very day, and she would do anything in her power to bring her husband back to life on Earth. Lyrule is informed by Tsukasa that he is the kind of man who behaves in such a manner, and Tsukasa blames himself for his actions. The sorrow that Lyrule feels for Tsukasa's life causes her to cry softly. As Tsukasa works toward his goal of becoming a politician who is free of corruption, he tells her that he does not regret ever having done something like that. As Lyrule approaches Tsukasa, she draws him closer to her and holds him in her arms. She assures him that she will never grow to despise him, regardless of how hard he tries to do so. For the first time in several days, Tsukasa gives in to her words and asks for permission to rest his head on her lap. This will allow him to get some much-needed rest. During the time that Tsukasa is sleeping, Ringo, who has been listening in on their conversation the entire time, goes to her office to make herself comfortable. She appears to have a crush on Tsukasa, it would appear. When Akatsuki visits the bathhouse the following day, he is accompanied by 2 different women. In an effort to keep the ladies away from him, he employs every strategy in his book, but none of them are successful. He is disappointed in Ru because she was unable to learn the multiplication tables in the allotted time. Her friends Akatsuki, Aoi, and Kane offer her some advice on how to learn something in a short amount of time. After a more positive experience at the bathhouse, Ru is now prepared to learn the multiplication tables. It is Akatsuki who poses a few questions to her regarding multiplication, and she answers all of them correctly. The time has come for her to learn division, after she has successfully completed her test on multiplication. As the story comes to a close, Ru is seen standing and staring at 5 fish, pondering the question of how she would go about learning division. Upon arriving at the Kokonono village inn, Elch and Shinobu visit an inn to rest from their long journey. It is the residents of the town who provide them with a wide variety of fatty foods to gorge themselves on. When Shinobu and Elch are still able to do so, they make it a point to consume food and drink. First, the commoners wait until both of the travelers have consumed alcohol before showing them their rooms so that they can rest and get sober. Melinda, the daughter of the innkeeper, gives Elch a hushed warning to leave the village while they still have the opportunity to do so. In the process of dragging her down to the basement, her mother leaves Elch and Shinobu alone in the room. Now that she is no longer there, Shinobu immediately puts an end to the act and becomes sober. Then, she makes her way over to Elch and kisses him in order to get him to become sober. After they have returned to their normal routine, she informs Elch that something is not quite right. The individuals continue to encourage them to consume food without even going so far as to touch the food themselves. She rises to her feet and leads Elch down to the basement of the inn. They discover the mutilated bodies of former travelers that have been skewered up and hung in the air at that location. Cannibals were the only possible interpretation of this information. At that precise moment, the alarm for an emergency situation goes off, and the commoners get out of their seats to be inspected by Silver Knight Jean. The Imperial Knights are greeted by everyone who has gathered together. Jean examines each individual and makes certain that they are all clean and free of any stains. They are then disregarded by her. During the final moments before Melinda and her mother leave, Jean notices that Melinda's dress has some dirt on it. After receiving her call, she gives the order for her soldiers to flog her as a form of discipline for her filthy behavior. Elch and Shinobu, who were quietly observing the situation from their room, make the decision to assist the young girl. Elch is instructed by Shinobu to call her dad and inform him that she has been taken captive. After that, she makes her way out of the room and makes a statement that she is willing to be captured on the condition that the guards stop punishing Melinda for being a child. Shinobu has been grabbed, stripped naked, and thrown into the dungeons for his crimes. Jean pays her a visit that evening and gives the order for the guards who are currently on duty to leave immediately. During this interim period, Melinda's mother expresses her gratitude to Elch for assisting her daughter. Seeing through the nonsense, Elch confronts her with a question about the horrifying things he witnessed in the basement. The mother of Melinda breaks down in tears and tells her children that they had no other option but to do that in order to survive. Because they were afraid of getting dirty, the people of Gustav have been forced to stop cultivating their own food and plowing the fields ever since Gustav became their leader and imposed his always clean rule. Over the course of time, their food supplies ran out, and they were compelled to consume human beings. After feeling sorry for her, Elch makes the decision to assist her. In an unexpected turn of events, Jean frees Shinobu from her chains and asks for her assistance in their fight against Gustav. It would appear that she despises the man's guts and seeks to get rid of him. The decision is made by Shinobu to assist her. Duke Gustav is seen admiring a brand new golden statue of the Emperor that his people have just constructed. This statue is located in the king's castle. In order to pay tribute to their emperor, he instructs his subordinate to start the construction of 3 additional statues. The individual cautions him that acquiring additional gold could lead to the town falling into an even deeper state of despair. However, Duke is completely unconcerned about it. When he inquires about their assault on Feindolf, the subordinate responds by informing him that they intend to launch an assault on them after the winter has passed, as a result of their method of assault being so slow. The Duke becomes extremely enraged and retreats to his basement. At that location, he draws out his spear of fire, which is called Blade Sol Lael, and gets ready to attack Feindolf with it. Suddenly, while Lyrule is working, she comes to a halt and hears voices in her head warning her about a dangerous force that is approaching the 7 Light Faith heroes. The spear is launched by Gustav at a high rate of speed in the direction of the village. The UFO that is approaching them is detected by Ringo's systems almost immediately after it has arrived. Based on her calculations, she believes that Feindolf will be the point of impact. There is an immediate deployment of anti-air missiles by her, but they are completely ineffective. Ringo is instructed by Tsukasa to continue firing the missiles in the hope that they will deflect the spear in the direction of the ocean. Despite Ringo's best efforts, the spear manages to avoid all of the missiles. Eventually, it arrives in the village and immediately begins the process of destroying it. The fiery spear transforms into a flaming knight almost immediately after it has landed in the village, and he immediately begins his assault on the village. A fire silhouette declares that he is the loyal knight of His Imperial Majesty, Oslo Gustav, as the fire missile falls on the village. According to him, the flame of his wrath will consume all of the villagers to the point where their very souls are consumed. At this moment, Tsukasa and his subordinate are observing the scene. Tsukasa is questioned by the subordinate about if this is what they refer to as Duke Gustav's Heaven's Flames. They inquire with Tsukasa about what they ought to do because the fire is going to arrive at this location in a short while and they need to get out of there. But there are residents who have not yet escaped over there. Every single villager is making a mad dash to get away from the fire. Exactly at that moment, Akatsuki appears out of nowhere and informs the villagers that Dormont has just been the target of a clandestine assault by the Empire. They do not need to be concerned because the 7 Light Faith will not abandon them, despite the fact that the Empire is attempting to destroy the city along with its former nobility. Tsukasa, on the other hand, expresses to his subordinate that they have already informed them of every step that needs to be taken in the event that situations such as this occur, and that they have already arranged for all of the necessary manpower and supplies. All that is left for them to do is maintain their composure and carry out their responsibilities in a steady and sure manner. Ringo receives a phone call from Tsukasa, who informs her that he has one more request for her. On the other hand, Bernard discovers a group of nobles who are trapped in the burning street and rescues them. Why did he save them? The nobles want to know. We are told by Bernard that he is only fighting for a future in which everyone is on an equal footing. Continued assaults are being made on the village. During the time that they are pondering ways to put out the fires, 5 of the 7 prodigies arrive at the scene. The spirits that have been imprisoned are released by Liege Solio, and they are dispersed throughout the village. These spirits manifest themselves as humanoid zombies that are on fire. After that, they start touching and burning everyone in the room. Tsukasa Mikagami rescues all of the people who were able to escape the fire without being injured and transports them to a ruin located just outside of the city. Lyrule rushes towards them at that location and informs them about a method that can be used to destroy Liege Solio. If they were successful in destroying the spear's lance, the curse that had been placed on the spirits would be lifted, and all of the spirits that had been imprisoned would be released once more. Lyrule is completely taken aback because she is unable to comprehend how she came to be aware of such information. She is thanked by Tsukasa, who then proceeds to explain his new plan to Ringo. Now that the spirits that were bound to the spear have dispersed themselves throughout the city, they have a better chance of destroying the spear than they did before. This leaves only one thing to consider. Considering the amount of fire that is raging around the spear, it is inevitable that any missile targeting system will fail and become off course. It would be ideal if they could find a system that would bring the missile close enough to the lance to enable it to hit it. There is a complete lack of soundness. Aoi, the samurai, offers to take the initiative and direct the missile in the direction of the lance. Tsukasa allows her to stand up because they are all at a loss for what to do at this point. Thereafter, Aoi prepares herself for the launch of the missile by covering herself in cold water. Aoi runs alongside the missile as it is launched by Ringo. She holds the missile in her hands and uses the fuel from the missile as thrust to increase her level of speed. As Aoi maneuvers the missile away from all of the obstacles, she demonstrates an incredible amount of strength and stability. She does this until she is close enough to the missile to let it go. Since Liege Solio is aware that something is heading in his direction, he takes every precaution he can to protect himself from being hit by the missiles that are intended to strike him. Regrettably for him, Aoi is a samurai, and one should never, ever interact with him in any way. Both Liege Solio and the missile are destroyed as a result of her successful redirection. Upon returning to the castle, Oslo El Gustav incurs a portion of the damage that was done to the lance, resulting in the loss of both of his arms. With the release of the lance, the spirits that had been imprisoned within it are now free to go and rest in peace. As they ascend into the heavens, they express their gratitude to the 7 Light Faith warriors. Tsukasa is able to spend some time alone with Lyrule, during which he shares with her his goals for the future of the village. Once more, he makes a commitment to ensuring that a catastrophe of this magnitude will never occur again. Lyrule expresses her gratitude to him and then talks to him about the enigmatic voice that she heard in her head. The next thing she does is suggest that she begin learning magic so that she can assist Tsukasa in her own unique way. The approval is granted to her by Tsukasa. As a result of their victory over Liege Solio, the entire village is filled with elation the following full day. Over the phone, Shinobu Saratobi rants to Tsukasa about how he was unable to participate in all of the fun that took place the night before. She receives praise from Tsukasa for forming a partnership with the Azure Brigade Resistance Force, and she is urged to continue the good work that she has been doing. Moments later, Masato Sanada shows up to have a conversation with his friend. As Tsukasa shares the news of Lyrule's realization with him, he ponders the appropriate course of action. While they are having their conversation, Bernard arrives with his newly modernized army consisting of 50 men who are fully armed with artillery and firearms. Ader losing his arms, Gustave replaces them with fiery ones and instructs his subordinate Oscar to assemble all 10,000 troops and march towards Feindorf all at once. In light of the fact that the 7 Light Faith warriors are aware that Gustave is now impatient and easier to defeat in that state, this is undoubtedly wonderful news for them. A few hours after the decree is issued, Gustave's soldiers ride through the snowy mountains in order to arrive at Feindorf all at once. As a result of Gustave's hasty decision to attack the 7 Light Faith head-on, the captain, Marquis Buchwald, expresses his dissatisfaction with Gustave's actions. Bernard and his soldiers had already caught a glimpse of the front lines from their fort, which they were unaware of at the time. For the purpose of instilling fear in Buchwald's mind, he gives orders to his men to shoot down some men. In accordance with what Masato and Bernard had predicted, this plan is successful, and Butchwold withdraws. The command is given to Bernard's men to initiate the pursuit of Butchwold and his men. This is something that Butchwold is aware of, and he takes actions to give Bernard the impression that they are actually withdrawing. Through the use of his heavy cavalry, he intends to seize Bernard and his men in the plain fields that surround Butchwold. While this plan is successful, it is unfortunate for him because it was all a part of the larger plan after all. Bernard maintains his composure and uses hand grenades to eliminate the heavy cavalry, just as Masato had intended for him to do. This time, Butchwold goes into Butchwold instead of retreating for real, as Gustav, on the other hand, delivers his final speech to his troops before sending them off to war. He does not appear to be affected by the situation. Immediately after beginning their assault on Christoph, the Azure Brigade is successful in turning all of his soldiers against him. Gale directs her attention to Butchwold and dispatches her killer drones in the direction of the city. She then demands that Butchwold surrender in order to stop herself from being wiped out. Several hours later, Gustav is no longer able to escape his castle because he has lost the few remaining men on his side. They approach him and demand that he surrender himself. Jean and Shinobu are there. As the proud individual that he is, Gustav does not give in to surrender. Instead of that, he increases his power and attacks the girls with his arms that are blazing with fire. In order to properly prepare for a counterattack, Jean and Shinobu are able to successfully avoid the majority of his attacks. They take advantage of the opportunity that presents itself after blinding Gustav in the eyes and proceed to behead him. Gustav is able to recognize their deception and make a defense for himself. In spite of this, Jean is able to locate his blind spot and ultimately defeat him. In the midst of his profuse bleeding, Gustav employs his own blood to conjure up a magical spell that will cause him to harm himself. Fortunately, Jean and Shinobu are able to flee without suffering any injuries. In the aftermath of the conflict, the towns and villages start the process of rebuilding themselves. After recognizing Masato's wit and strength, Marquis Butchwold makes the decision to be a member of the team that emerges victorious. He affirms his commitment to the Seven Light Faith as his allegiance. After a few days have passed, the ladies of the Seven Light Faith all take pleasure in a soothing massage that is performed using the pricey aroma oils that were created specifically for them by the Imperial Mages. Due to the fact that Ringo is on the shorter side, she becomes extremely timid whenever it is her turn to receive a massage. The young ladies are aware of what is taking place and offer to massage her chest region in an effort to boost her confidence. In addition, Akatsuki participates in the neuro-massage that the ladies are receiving and enjoys spending time with them. Following the completion of their work, they will introduce themselves to Masato and Kumasa. After making small talk, the two of them make fun of Akatsuki due to the fact that he is dressed in a girl's attire. Once more, the Seven Light Faith heroes convene in a group setting. The first topic of conversation is about Lyrule, who is currently gaining experience in the field of magic in order to become a mage. They are continuing to talk about their partnership. The group is informed by Masato that he is concerned about the Azure Brigade because it is possible that they are not entirely on their side just yet. It would appear that the group is currently experiencing some intriguing dynamics as well as potential conflicts that are developing. It will be fascinating to observe how these relationships develop over time and how they deal with some of the difficulties they face. Discussing further, Masato tells the group that the Azure Brigade may just be recognizing the strength of the Seven Light Faith and are surrendering to avoid fighting a bigger foe while facing Gustav. Akatsuki interrupts them and tells them the lie Count Conrad told during their meeting. Akatsuki had asked him for the location of the golden statue of the Emperor Conrad. However, Conrad lies about the location and tells him he doesn't know where it is. There's another thing they have to worry about. Is Gustav really dead? They just have to wait and find out. In the meantime, they just have to find a way to bring the people of Azure to their side so they can render the brigade powerless. Before he gets to speak on his plan, Kane interrupts in and demands that Akatsuki and Ringo, the least rested members of the Seven Light Faith, take well-deserved breaks so they don't break down and fall sick. Akatsuki can't go against his doctor, so he thanks Kane for the advice and suspends their meeting for another busy day. He then asks Ringo, who's had a crush on him for a while now, to go on a date with him. Ringo gets home and tells her AI assistant. The assistant gets so happy for Ringo about her date, she tells Ringo to make the date count so Akatsuki gets to fall in love with her. Now, Ringo has no knowledge on how to pull men to her side. She visits Aoi to get advice on how to act during the date. Aoi's explanation on the subject matter goes way out of line as she tells Ringo to seize Akatsuki by the balls and break him. Clearly, she can't do such a thing, so Ringo visits Kane to hear her say on the matter. This time, Kane's approach is somewhat dangerous. She explains to Ringo a subtle way of grasping a man. Ringo gets very surprised at the violent answer she's receiving. That evening, she hits the bathhouse and meets Shinobu there. After asking for her opinion, Shinobu tells her to go later than expected. The next day, Ringo makes sure to arrive at their meeting spot late. Akatsuki finds her hiding and calls to her. Ringo's face immediately goes red after seeing her crush. People also start flocking around them as they recognize them both as members of the Seven Light Faith. Firstly, Akatsuki takes Ringo to a clothing shop to change her clothes. After getting into new clothes, Ringo's face lights up red as Akatsuki appears cuter than ever. Akatsuki walks through town, turning women's heads while they walk. Ringo remembers Shinobu's second tip, which is to hold her crush's hand when they walk together. To do this, Ringo decides to slip and fall into Akatsuki's hands. Akatsuki picks her up and takes her to a diner to eat lunch there. Ringo remembers the third trick, which is the indirect kiss moment. Ringo tries her best but ends up switching wine cups with Akatsuki. Ringo feigns truly and recalls her younger times. Apparently, Ringo was the result of a genetic experiment her mother carried out on herself. A few years after being born, Ringo begins to solve heavy calculus and quantum equations. She received her first scientific award at age 6 and got it 3 times in a row. This made her mom jealous of her success and abandoned her. Later on, Ringo goes on to live her life like an orphan until she meets this strange boy from school, Akatsuki. From that time, Akatsuki would get spoiled electronics and give it to Ringo for repair. This continued until one day, after school, Ringo had to refuse to fix things for him. Ringo finds Tsukasa at an electronic shop, telling the owner he won't be able to fix his things anymore. She observes the owner and Tsukasa talks about how talented she was. Just then, Ringo wakes up on Tsukasa's lap on a bench facing the ocean. She laughs and feels thankful that she was able to get this close to the love of her life and be with him, even if the feelings seem one-sided. Ringo takes a selfie with Tsukasa and gets to smile again with the love of her life. She gets up and thanks Tsukasa for the date. Tsukasa acknowledges Ringo's gratitude and then makes a significant request from her to assist in the making of something remarkable. The following evening, Ringo arrives back at his residence and immediately begins working on the project. Shinobu receives a phone call from Tsukasa, who inquires about the current situation of the Azure Brigade while Ringo is working on the project. He is informed by Shinobu that a fellow soldier has just left to go see the Emperor in order to make a solemn pledge of allegiance to the Empire. Because it is impossible to know what each member of the brigade had in store for the Seven Light Faith, Tsukasa gives her the advice to exercise extreme caution around the members of the brigade. The next day, the villagers are brought down by the infectious disease known as miasma, which is fatal. At this point, Keen's antibiotics ought to be able to heal them up just fine. However, she has run out of stock, and she won't be able to produce any more antibiotics to treat the villagers until the next batch is finished. Miasma is being treated by Count Cerentius, who is the head of the medical guild in Gustav's nation. He arrives with his minions and attempts to sell opium, his dangerous new drug, as a medicine to remedy the condition. The Seven Light Faith is criticized by him for their inability to provide treatment for their own villagers, and he suggests that they instead purchase the drug that he is selling. To our great relief, Imurata arrives just in time to prevent them from selling such a drug to the villagers. She tells Count Cerentius that she needs a few days to come up with an entirely new drug to treat this plague. She gives him the time she needs. The Count Cerentius and his men laugh at the inconceivable possibility of this happening, and then they depart immediately. The pain that the infected villagers are experiencing is alleviated by Keen through the use of acupuncture, and then she continues with the process of synthesizing the antimicrobial magic bullet drug, sulfonamide, with the assistance of Feindel's brand new mage, Lyrule. Keen is able to successfully create pink sulfonamide crystals from coal, sulfuric acid, and ammonia water, which smells like urine, in a matter of hours. She also obtains all of the materials that she would require to completely synthesize the magic bullet. As soon as she is finished, she gives the drug to the sick villagers, and eventually, they recover from their illnesses. Melinda's mother expresses gratitude to the 7 Light Faith heroes for their assistance in facilitating her daughter's recovery. Keen refrains from taking all of the credit for the success. Rather, she distributes it among the other villagers. After witnessing the miracle, Count Cerentius and his minions devise a nefarious scheme to poison the new medicine stock and kill some villagers, all with the intention of causing Keen to lose his credibility. The good news is that Keen has been following them. She does not administer the paralyzing medication until they have finished discussing their nefarious schemes. After that, she seizes the opportunity to threaten the life of Count Cerentius and forces him to swear that he will never again engage in such behavior. It is the following day that Count Cerentius decides to switch sides and makes a commitment to assist Keen with all of her research. They are even surprised that something like this could occur, but they have no choice but to obey him because they have no other option. Aside from that, Count Conrad confronts General Nero in order to make a solemn promise of allegiance to the Emperor. General Nero conveys to him that despite the fact that he is willing to grant his desires to once again become one with the Empire, the 7 Light Faith must be eliminated. In order to make that happen, Count Conrad has stated that he will do anything. With a grin on his face, General Nero proceeds to present Count Conrad with a masked mage who will be at his disposal. In front of everyone, the mage arrives and forges Laged Solel, which causes Count Conrad to feel a profound sense of dread. Conrad is given the responsibility of bringing down the 7 Light Faith Knights after General Nero places the mage under his control and instructs him to do so. The nuke is finished off by Ringo. The following is the revised version of your text, which includes the correct names for the characters. Tsukasa Mikagami observes the construction of the asteroid and provides her with an explanation of some of his core beliefs before releasing her in the subsequent scene. It is observed that Emerauda is offering her prayers to the magnificent statue of Count Cerentius. Emerauda is informed of Conrad's rebellion by Prince Akatsuki, who is one of the captains of the knights. He arrives with his guards and delivers the news. There is a possibility that they will attempt to kill Emerauda at that time, so she attacks them in the hopes of escaping. Her misfortune was that Raisonac's men were more powerful than she was. Before they killed her and disposed of her body, they pinned her down and made preparations to commit heinous acts against her. He gives her over to his men so that they can enjoy her. The arrival of Shinobu Saratobi, who arrives just as they are about to begin their heinous act, saves Emerauda from the most embarrassing situation she has ever encountered in her knighthood. Over the course of their collaboration, the two women work together to completely eliminate Raisonac. Shinobu Saratobi takes Emerauda to the underground shelter of the Azure Brigade once they are no longer in danger. There, he reveals to her the secret that Count Conrad has been keeping, which is a statue of the prince. In the moment that Emerauda discovers that Count Conrad has been lying to her the entire time, she breaks down in tears. They quickly hide as they hear Count Conrad approaching the shelter with a masked mage. Shinobu Saratobi offers her sanctuary with the 7 Light Faith, and they quickly hide behind the 7 Light Faith. When the masked mage finally reveals his true identity, Shinobu and Jean are able to witness it. As a result of the fact that Count Conrad was responsible for the destruction of the golden statue of the Emperor, he becomes extremely enraged and discloses his true identity in order to exact his punishment on Conrad. When the two women investigate, they discover that the man in the mask is actually Gustav. He appears to have been brought back to life with a red gem of some kind placed on his chest, which appears to have taken the place of his heart. He comes across the two women hiding nearby and launches a full-scale assault on them. As soon as possible, Shinobu and Jean mount their horses and start riding in the direction of Feindolf in order to alert the other people to the impending danger. They were unaware that Tsukasa had already launched the nuclear weapon in the direction of Gustav's location. In the midst of the maniac's declaration of his love for the Emperor, the nuclear weapon strikes Azure Brigade, causing him to explode. At the same time that the thunderbolt is reducing the brigade grounds to ashes, Jean and Shinobu both watch as the entire brigade grounds erupt in flames. Even the people who live in Feindolf are able to make out the cloud of fire that is located far away on the horizon. After finishing their work, Ringo and Tsukasa raise a glass to a new world that is characterized by equality and diplomacy. Ringo is informed by Tsukasa that they must maintain their strength in order to continue to run freely and fairly so that they can continue to compete. This leaves Ringo feeling very impressed, and he expresses his gratitude to Tsukasa for being the genuine leader of the new world. On the following day, Tsukasa is requested to deliver a speech to the population of the entire village in order to invigorate their spirits. In addition to recounting their victory over their adversaries the previous evening, Tsukasa informs the village about their newly formed alliance with the 4 great kingdoms that are located in the direction of the north. Then, as he comes to the end of his speech, he suggests to the people that they establish a republican nation in which everyone has the ability to make decisions for themselves and is not required to submit to the nobles either completely or to become peasants. The populace pulls themselves together to such an extent that they all praise the 7 Light Faith, who have recently taken control of the republican nation. On the other hand, their triumph is short-lived because Gustav eventually appears in his fiery form. In this instance, he transforms into a full-fledged monster that stands on 2 legs and changes his form. At the same time that Aoi and Shinobu are attempting to destroy the red gem that is on his chest, Gustav knocks them out. Aoi puts her full effort into one final assault, and she is successful in breaking the gem that is on his chest. Sadly, her sword breaks, and she is blown away by the momentum of the wind. Gustav moves closer to Tsukasa, who is still standing on the platform, and makes his move towards him. Tsukasa pulls out his weapon and continues to fire it repeatedly at the chest region until a bullet travels through it and causes it to pass through. Immediately prior to his disintegration, Gustav gives Tsukasa one last look and refers to him as a feeble individual. He allows him a little bit more time and assures him that he will discover the reason why he himself follows the Emperor in the near future. Following that, he disintegrates and passes away a few miles away from Feindolf. 3 warrior women named Kabiya, Shura, and Hibari come to the realization that a fresh breeze is blowing. An additional individual joins them and expresses his delight at the New World formation. Tsukasa wakes up the following day after having a nightmare about himself and his co-workers on the previous night. It is then that he recalls the words of Gustav and reminds himself that he is not as good of a prodigy as the other 6 artists who are working alongside him. In spite of this, he dresses up as if he were the ideal gentleman and sits down to eat breakfast with his contemporaries. After he has his eyes set on some mayonnaise, he begins to dig in for a feast that Winona and her father have prepared for him. For breakfast, there is a significant amount of mayonnaise that Rizz spreads on her toast. Tsukasa is seated next to Lyrule and Ringo, who sit next to him and offer him some food to eat. Suddenly, Tsukasa is reminded of his friends, and he smiles, forgetting all of the negative messages that were sent to him. After that, he goes on to inform his contemporaries about the new policies that will govern the new world that they are constructing before they eat their breakfast. And that's a wrap on the extraordinary journey of our high school prodigies in another world. It's been a thrilling ride. The adventures and lessons they've shared will always remain with us. If you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Your support powers us to bring more amazing content your way. Until next time, stay safe and don't forget to live your extra life.